Hello fellow survivors and welcome to the latest dev diary summary / analysis with this campfire chat where we're going to go through the latest news of the Long Dark and what you can expect in a upcoming release and the future of the Long Dark. Most of what I'm going to say is going to be taken from the latest dev diary released in October 2024, which is outlining the next episode of Wintermute, the next part of the DLC, as well as the future of the Long Dark. So we're going to get to it. Before I do though, let me just say one small thing. Where I am sitting right now, there is some rain and it turned into a hurricane, so there might be some minor background noise and there's not much I can do about it. And as a family man, I only have so many evenings where I can record, so it's just going to have to be what it is. So we have a lot to talk about today with Wintermute, the Cougar, things coming from the next expansion or DLC part, as well as the future of the Long Dark. So let's just hop straight into it and let's talk about the big one first that has been mostly avoided in all of the other campfire chats because there hasn't been much news about it, but now we have more, and that is Wintermute episode 5. Now there's a nuance I have to point out here before we go further. Story mode as of today is a separate game than survival mode. This was changed in December 2022 when they released the Tales from the Far Territory. The reason this was done was mostly for practical reasons, and that's also the reason why there was the Great Reset where all save files became obsolete. Because basically what it meant before was a story mode and survival mode was the same game, so if they added a new mechanic to survival mode, they had to add that into story mode as well. And similarly, if they added a new episode or changed something in story mode, they had to add that into survival as well because they were linked. And they split that into 2 different games, so you could now update survival mode without it impacting the story. So that's why that is a thing. So that means that things that are coming in Wintermute episode 5 doesn't necessarily make its way into survival mode, although I think it's a missed opportunity if they don't integrate some of the major components. And we're going to see how that works out. That being said though, let's talk about the actual episode. A lot of people are hyped about this. The vast majority of the Long Dark players actually play survival mode, but a significant portion really like Wintermute or only play Wintermute and are really invested in the story. And I think a lot of us want to see where this is going. It's been a long time coming. And the episode 5, we already knew, was titled The Light at the End of All Things, because there was a previous dev diary that revealed this title along with a poster showing a ship sailing off into the aurora, so to speak. And then the big question was what was going to happen. And a lot of people assumed you're going to play in Perseverance Mills, which has always been the goal of the story, for Astrid to get to Perseverance Mills with her hard case and what's in the hard case. And the episode 5 will reveal what's in the case, and it will conclude the story following Astrid, but also Will in his new region. So we're going to play as both Astrid and Will. So in the previous 4 episodes, you actually played as one or the other. You played as Will in 3 of them and Astrid in 1, which was episode 3. And actually in all of the episodes except for episode 2, you only play in 1 region. And this one, it seems you're going to play in 2 regions. You're going to play in Perseverance Mills as Astrid, and you're going to play in the Observatory region as Will. So I have seen quite a few comments over the years in my videos where people seem to kind of forget that Will is going to a new region. They make this pretty clear in episode 4 when Will talks to Jace that there is a place with an observatory where there is a, astronomer called Atwood, and Will really wants to go there. So I always figured that is where the story would conclude, and that's where Will would go.
We're out of time. I've been gone for too long. Atwood's gonna be pissed.
What did you say?
Oh, right. Just my thesis advisor. She's the only reason I'm out here at all, Mackenzie. I'm a grad student, astrophysics.
I have to see her.
You have to see my thesis advisor. You aren't making any sense, Mackenzie.
It'll take too long to explain. We need to get out of here and get to Atwood as soon as possible. Where is she?
The Suzuki Radio Telescope. It's about 15 to 20 clicks from here. That's where I was headed when my car stopped working.
We have to get to Atwood.
I still don't get it, but yeah, we do.
I'm worried about her. With all this going on, she's fragile.
Okay.
And it seems like basically Will is going to probably be playing in that region, and then we're going to switch back and forth between him and Astrid. And the Dev Diary says that the episode 5 will conclude the entire story. It will reveal what's in the hard case. Although I think we already kind of knew what was in the hard case. I'm pretty sure it's the cure for a disease that's in Perseverance Mills. I'm pretty sure that's what it is, but maybe that was just speculation. I've only played story mode a couple of times, so I could be wrong about that. And also, he says they're going to reveal what's actually going on with the Aurora. So that's interesting because I'm not sure about you, but I was never really that bothered about why the Aurora is acting the way it is. Because what difference does it make? It's just a game mechanic. It's a gimmick that adds aesthetic and mechanisms to the game. And I really like the Aurora. I don't really need to know why the Aurora acts the way it does. But if there was always a reason for why it acted the way it did, I guess it would be interesting to look into. It almost certainly ties closely into the tales that you can play in survival mode and Rudiger's machine and his research. And by the way, if you're very interested in the story mode and you haven't played the tales, I recommend you do so. We don't know how they tie in, but they do tie into episode 5. And the third tale especially can be very brutal, so I recommend you play this on Pilgrim if you just want to play them for the sake of it. Get the DLC, play them on Pilgrim or something, just to get the story. Or watch someone else play it if you want. I have a supercut coming of the entire thing. Just so you have the entire picture. But yeah, so we're going to get a lot of answers in this episode. And that's going to be interesting. It also includes the whole Mathis aspect as well. So, that's basically what there is to say. It's coming out next year. It was initially announced to be the end of 2024. But has been pushed to 2025. That's not entirely unexpected. I kind of thought that was going to happen because they still needed to release DLC Part 6 and also they needed more time to rework the Cougar, so it's not too surprising that they had to push episode 5 back. As they state in the developer diary, once they release Part 6 of the DLC, the entire team working on the DLC will then be shifted to the Wintermute team, and then they have a lot more manpower, so to speak, to wrap up the episode. So they don't say exactly when we're going to get it, but it probably will be early somewhere in 2025. That's basically what's going to happen. So yeah, probably my guess will be like April or something next year is when we will get it. That's just a guess though. Also, because they're adding 2 new regions, they are separate because they're split between story and survival. We don't know if those regions will be added to survival, but I think probably they will. The observatory region that Will is going to, it will be a missed opportunity to not add that, even if it's a small one. Perseverance Mills is a bit up for discussion because people have different interpretations of episode 4. So in episode 4, Astrid can be seen taking a boat from where she exited in episode 3 to Perseverance Mills, and you can see her arrive, and it's quite a journey across the oceans and everything. And it's just, it's kind of implied that Perseverance Mills is on an island somewhere, but that's never been hinted at before. And people in the main story always say, oh, that's quite far away and you got to take this road and so on. There's never been any mention of Perseverance Mills being on a separate island anywhere. So most likely Perseverance Mills is just further along the coast, on the far east side of the map. And that's, a lot of people have speculated that's where it is. So it's likely that what Astrid did in episode 4 was to take a boat around the coast rather than traversing it in the snow, and she ended up in Perseverance Mills. So there's no reason to think that Perseverance Mills will not be added to survival mode in time, connected through Broken Railroad or something like that. We don't really know, of course, but it'd be a shame to not utilize, or at least not maybe modify the regions for survival mode. So yeah. That's it, episode 5. A lot to say about it this time. It's coming probably early or mid 2025. It's going to conclude the story. You're going to play as Will and Astrid. You're going to play in 2 different regions, and we're going to see exactly what happens with it. Yeah, That's episode 5. And then we have the new Cougar coming as well. And this change with the Cougar is actually part of DLC part 6. So I should really include it with that. But I'm just going to talk about it separately first. So the Cougar is a big issue and we could have a whole video about it. And I have multiple on it already because this was something that really shook the community and the developers. So the Cougar has been talked about being released for years in the Long Dark. It was kind of then scrapped, or at least came silent, then it came back. And people were really stoked about it. A super predator that was going to be really difficult to kill, but give good rewards and so on. And then they announced to release it in DLC Part 6, The Last Horizon. And when they released it, it was met, regrettably, with almost overwhelming negative reception. To the degree that they actually removed the Cougar after just 5 days. So they released it and 5 days later, it was removed. I have a video about the Cougar that shows you how it works, or rather how it worked. When the new Cougar comes out, that video will be marked as obsolete. If you never got a chance to try it out, you could check out that video to see how it worked. The reason I was able to complete that video so quickly following release is because I had early access to the Cougar itself, and I made a brief tutorial on how it worked. Regrettably, that video probably contributed to the Cougar being removed so quickly because it acted as a portal for people to see how the Cougar was working. And the comments in the video are overwhelmingly negative towards the Cougar. The video itself is positively received, so I didn't get any criticism because I just had access to the Cougar. But the Cougar mechanic was not well received at all. Just to clarify, I said this before, I was not a playtester for the Cougar. I was a playtester for Misery, and I am very happy with my playtesting for Misery, the mode, because I wrote a lengthy report to Hinterland, gave a lot of feedback, and they made changes to Misery mode following my feedback. And what happened when Misery mode was released was also almost exactly how I predicted it would go when the community took hold of it. So I'm very happy with my playtesting for Misery. The Cougar was not something I playtested. I just had access to the launch build before other people did as a reward for playtesting Misery, and I took the opportunity to make a Cougar tutorial for it. I did give feedback to Hinterland about the Cougar, but they weren't going to change anything at that point. That being said, though, I actually kind of liked the Cougar. So let's talk about the Cougar, how it was, before we talk about the Cougar that's coming. So the Cougar, how it was basically an uninteractable super predator that was kind of like outdoor cabin fever. The way it worked in a nutshell was this. If you stay too long in a region, the Cougar would take notice of you and start stalking you. But the Cougar was not actually to be found anywhere. You could hear it, but you couldn't see it, but it could attack you at any given point. And when it did, it would cause massive damage to you. And then you had a short window of opportunity where you could kill the Cougar. Killing it would then make you safe for the time being. You got some pretty good rewards out of it too. And when I first encountered this, I really liked it because it was something different that made it interesting. And also it was, especially on Interlock, it was so devastatingly difficult to kill the Cougar that it became one of these super predators that you, generally speaking, shouldn't encounter. So I liked that it was something that was basically a run ender unless you were extremely prepared for it. So I liked that. However, that being said, I completely understand and agree with most of the criticism. So if you're not familiar with the debate that happened when the Cougar was released, it basically boils down to this. The vast majority of players did not like that the Cougar could not be seen walking around the world. The Cougar was basically this invisible force in the world that did not interact with the player until the player was attacked, and you could not prevent the attack in any way at all other than leaving the region. People did not like that. They wanted the Cougar to be out there somewhere. Doesn't matter how. It could be stalking you somewhere, it could be approaching you very fast, it could be camping or hidden somewhere. Doesn't really matter. They wanted the Cougar to be out there in physical form somewhere where you could either hunt it or prevent it from attacking you in some way. That was really the main criticism. They didn't like that the attack was unavoidable. You had to be attacked in order to kill the Cougar. And I totally understand that. It takes away a certain optional immersion for the player and a way to hunt it. You have to choose to be attacked in order to kill it, basically. That was the main criticism. The secondary big criticism was that people didn't like the UI of the Cougar. So the game would just tell you that you had so and so many days before the Cougar came to your territory. And then it would tell you that the Cougar was in the territory. And you had auditory stuff, like you had the sounds of the Cougar, which was very creepy. But the game basically spoon-fed you all the information. And people didn't like that. So instead, it would be better if the Cougar maybe had signs that it was in the region, similar to how bears can be found by seeing that there are bones in the cave. So bear caves have bones in them, so you know that cave is a bear cave. And moose has moose markings, so you know this is where the moose spawns. So I think people were picturing something like that for the Cougar, like claw marks on a tree or something like that. And that's not what they got. So those were the two main criticisms against the Cougar. There were other ones too, but it was really boiled down to those two. And as a result, Hinterland removed the Cougar entirely and has spent now a long time reworking it. And now we're getting Cougar 2.0. So they haven't said too much about how the Cougar 2.0 works, except they have revised it a lot and listened to player feedback. So it seems now that the Cougar can be avoided by players, but it will become increasingly hostile if you seek them out. But if you try to hunt them, they could maybe hunt you instead. And they have removed the in-game HUD elements and this map info. Instead, there'll be some information in the world where you have to pay attention to where the Cougar is. And it's very, very different from before. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens this time. It does sound like the Cougar is more or less what the community wanted. It sounds like now the Cougar is somewhere in the world. It's an active animal in the long dark world. And there's probably some sort of mechanism for the Cougar hunting you or has some sort of territory effect. We don't really know how the Cougar works. We just know that it doesn't work the way it used to before. And we know that it's a physical animal out there in the world. I will clarify one thing that has been criticized. A lot of people, some people have said that the Cougar clearly was initially designed to be a physical entity in the world. And then it was abandoned as a concept. That's not true. The reason people thought that is because it is possible to spawn the Cougar into the world using the developer's console mod, and you can kill it in the open with weapons. It's very buggy though, but it can be done. And people took this as evidence that there was some basic AI in the Cougar, and that meant the developers had tried to make it an open world animal, but they abandoned it. But that's not the case. It's just a side effect of its programming, and it's got different things in it. There was a post made by Raf explaining that this was never the case. It was never intended to be in the open world. It was intended exactly the way it was released. But they have now reworked it based on player feedback, and the new Cougar is going to be an animal walking around in the world in some form or another, and there will be signs that it's around, and it seems to be very dangerous. So I don't have early access this time. I have no idea how it's going to work, but I'm going to tell you I'm super excited to see how it works, because it's I thought the old system was brutal. I'm hoping the new Cougar will be very brutal as well. Something that's very difficult to kill, very hard to find, but very rewarding if you do find it. So yeah, that's the Cougar. A lot to say about the Cougar, despite there not being much news about the Cougar, except that it is coming. Then we have the actual Tales from the Far Territory Part 6. So that's the big thing. It's coming in December. That's the big news, the main components of content. And this includes the Cougar, by the way. So this will happen in December. I don't know when in December. However, the DLC part 1 was December 5th, I think, and DLC part, what was it, 4? I think it was also in December, December 5th or something like that. So probably will be early December somewhere. We don't know though. They'll give us an exact date closer to the time, but we're talking about a December release for the final part of the Tales from the Far Territory content update. Alright, so what are we getting in the content update though? Well, we're getting quite a few things and there's quite a lot to talk about here. Let's get into it. So first thing first, let's talk about the trader. Now the trader has been a content for discussion for a long time, ever since it was announced in 2022, because people have really no idea how this is going to work. When it was announced that they're going to add a trader to the game, there was a lot of discussion on whether that was necessary, because the basic philosophy of survival mode, not story, but survival mode, is that you are isolated and alone. There's no one else around. There's no other people, no NPCs. You do find letters and you can find recordings and all sorts of stuff, but you are the only person left in the world, effectively. In story mode, you meet people, but not in survival. So when you add a trader to it, people were like, but then you're not alone anymore. So how does that work? Although a lot of people don't care about that. Some people want NPCs in the game, so there's a bit of a split opinion on that. The trader, who I think we can presume is a man based on a picture that was posted, but we're not sure. He has different goods he can trade with you. And of course the question is, how does that work? Is this a person you actually interact with, or is it someone who's just off in the distance? Based on the philosophy of the game and the description in the dev diary, it seems like this is going to be a character that you never actually meet. Instead, you contact him via the radio. You hear a voice on the radio, and this voice, it might lead you to the trader, and then you trade with him. But if I had to guess, instead what's going to happen is that it activates some sort of quest. Either he will ask for specific things, and then you have to bring those things to a location, or he will basically say, I'll leave such and such items in such and such locations, and if you leave these items, I'll give you such and such a reward. I imagine it being kind of like this.
Hello there, Will. I'm watching you from a distance.
Huh? Hello? Who is this?
I am the man you know as the trader. People call me the trader.
The trader? Who calls you the trader? There's no one around, like we're alone.
Well, my mother called me the trader.
Okay, what do you want?
Do you want to play a game, Will?
No, I don't want to play any games.
Well, I have a trade for you. See how I got my name? How about you bring me some stuff and I'll give you some stuff.
Okay, what kind of trade?
I require 10 ruined wolf meat, 1 summit soda, maple syrup, and a ruined torch. Don't ask questions.
Okay, and what do I get in return?
In return, I will teach you how to make improvised socks.
You have yourself a deal, sir. So I imagine it might be something like that. We don't really know, of course. We have to see. But that's the idea, I think. That it's someone that's... You never actually meet them. They just talk to you on the radio, and they either set specific demands or they give you things you can turn in. And then they will give you a reward in like a box somewhere. That will be my guess. And if that is the case, I think that this is exactly the right way to do it. I kind of hope you do not meet the trader, because then you maintain this sense of isolation and loneliness a bit better, particularly because that has been the case always until now. So I think it's better if you don't meet the trader, and that's just my opinion. Just listening to him is enough. That's just my opinion, though. Let me know what you think. Another thing about the trader is that he will sell items or like trade items that are unique to him. Like you will get items that are unique from the trader that you cannot find in the world. And that in and of itself is an interesting incentive to talk about or interact with the trader. Because he's a voice in the radio, you presumably have to have the radio to contact him. And presumably you need to fix the transmission towers too. So that means you have to have the DLC, and you have to go to the Forsaken Airfield, and you have to repair the towers. That would be my guess. Okay, and then we have a big one that a lot of people are hyped about. Get ready for this one. It's huge because you can do base building, kind of. So The Long Dark is unique in the survival genre in the sense that it does not have base building. Almost every survival game out there has base building in some way or another. The Long Dark doesn't have that, and I love that it doesn't have that because that takes focus away from the base building and more on the survival element. However, they are adding something akin to base building. You can't build the base, but you can customize bases. So what they're adding is the Safehouse Customization, where you basically have the option to redecorate pretty much any indoor location in the world. Isn't that great? You can make your own cozy little home anywhere you want. So the general gist of it is that pretty much any interior, which they call valid interior, can be a safe house. Pretty much if there is a loading screen, you can build a base in there. So it'll be interesting to see what you can do in, say, the dam or something, you know. And then you can pretty much, it looks like you can pretty much take most things from an interior and move it to another interior. And you can move things around, you can tidy up stuff and make it a nice place. And they released these photos, which were really neat, showing the difference in Trapper before and after. And as you can see, before, you have the standard trappers, kind of a few things here and there. But the new one has a bunch of stuff in it. They've added some new furniture and chairs. There's new storage solutions. There's art and other things that they've taken from other places. So it does seem like what Safehouse Customization does, it seems like what it basically allows you to do is pick up or move any item in an interior and then take it to another interior. And that's really neat. So then you can make your own base. So it doesn't really change too much survival mechanics. It's just mostly aesthetic. But of course you can probably create shelves and storage spaces and things, and maybe make a bed where there isn't a bed. So it will have some impact on survival and storage, but it's not a major thing. So this is a neat little thing. Does it need it in the game? No. Is it nice to have? Yeah, it's nice to have because you can make your own base. And you know, even me who's not into base building that much, I do decorate my bases with stuff like things I find, and this is just a step above that. So a lot of people are very hyped about this, and it does look like it's going to be really neat. You can really make your own base wherever you want inside of an interior, and you also have some unique new things coming. They're adding some things to Safehouse Customization that is unique to base building. So it seems like you can craft items now to be used for base building purposes, basically. That seems to be the case. And I think I would suspect that the trader might have like blueprints for some of these things as well. As hard to say that. But yeah, so base building or Safehouse Customization as it's called is coming. So you can finally remove those corpses from camp office, for example. Get rid of the shuffled papers on the floor, start tidying up and make yourself a cozy home. Isn't that nice? So it seems like you can really make the interior your own little base now. And that's nice and neat. And by the way, it does include some places that do not have loading screens. So things like lookout towers and Mountaineer's Hut and probably a few other places, they will also allow that you change things and create your interior base. So it seems like there's a lot of things happening here, and you basically have a whole new level of making a base now. I always say that you need to have a main base somewhere in the world, and then you have a regional base, at least one place in each region. And now, of course, you can make that interior much nicer. I guess the exception is Austria Valley, unless you stay in the bunker. So yeah, Safehouse Customization is coming. look out for it. And I look forward to seeing some bases. We should have a tournament of the nicest base. That would be cool. There was a tournament a while ago, actually, to do with base building, which was very cool. I have a video about it on this channel if you want to see some really creative bases in the old system. But now with this new system, wow, the possibilities are completely different. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Related to the Safehouse customization is a small thing being added that's probably the least talked about of anything in the DLC, which is the instant camera. So they're adding a camera to the world that allows you to take photos and add them to an album, which you can then craft, I guess, like a Polaroid, and you can hang them onto walls for your safe house, and you can have them in different colors. And this has not really been talked about. It was announced a while ago, but it was not really talked about. It was kind of like, oh yeah, that's neat. You know, a few comments here and there say, oh, I look forward to that. But most people don't really talk about this one, probably because it's just purely an aesthetic thing. It doesn't have any purpose other than just documenting your experiences. You can, of course, already take screenshots in the game, but this is different because you can now take photos of something and then adding it to your base. And that is kind of cool, actually, that you can now have the option to do that. You probably have to find a camera in a specific location, and then you can find film around, and then you print it out, kind of Polaroid. Or actually, I think in an earlier dev diary, they said there is a dark room you have to use to develop these photos, but then you can hang them in your base. And, you know, it'd be cool to get some scenic pictures here and there. Sometimes the Long Dark can be a beautiful game, and it's certainly worth taking pictures of. There's a similar feature in Subnautica where you can take pictures with your tablet, and then you can place those pictures in your base. So I assume this will work in a similar fashion. So this is a neat little aesthetic to the game. This just adds a little bit of homeliness and coziness to the game, I guess. And yeah, I'm sure some of us are going to have pictures of a wolf before we died, right? So that's the camera. And then, my fellow survivors, we have a massive change to the game, which is the one that I am the most hyped about, because I talked about this quite a few times, and it is the global wildlife refresh. This is a huge one, because it changes how the animals work in the game, in particular where they are. So, those of you who are familiar with my channel know that I have tutorials on pretty much everything in the game, including all the challenges and that sort of thing. And I have tutorials on beginner's guides to the Long Dark, how to succeed in Interloper, and so on and so forth, right? And that's all well and done. And people always ask me, like, why don't you make a new tutorial for Voyager or Escape the Darkwalker or whatever? And my answer is always the same. I don't really see the point in making updated tutorials when they're going to change the wildlife, because then those tutorials will be obsolete again when the wildlife happens. So now that's finally coming. They're going to change the entire wildlife of the entire game. So that means that there are going to be different places where animals now roam. Previous dev diaries have also hinted that there might be some sort of dynamic system at play here where animals might migrate. So the way the game works now is that when you start a game, the animals are more or less locked in. The game has decided where the moose is going to spawn, which bears are active, which wolves are active, and so on. And that doesn't really change throughout the entire game. But if it's dynamic, I think there'll be some migration where some animals will change where they are. And I'm not sure if that's going to be the case here. They don't explicitly say it, but that would be interesting if that is the case. But what definitely seems to be the case is that the animals will change their location. So, for example, right now, if you just take an example, in Mystery Lake, there are 4 possible bear spawns, and 2 of them will be active for any run. So when you spawn, the bear could be by Clear Cut, it could be by Unnamed Pond, it could be by Trapper's Cabin, or it could be by Mystery Lake itself. Those are the 4 places, and 2 of those will be active, the 2 other will not be active, right? And of course, once you know that, you always know where the bear is going to be, and it will always be there unless you just killed it. Same with wolves, they'll only be in certain places. They might roam a little bit, but they're generally in the same places. So as you learn the maps, you also learn where the animals are, and then you are prepared for things that could come around the corner. And as you experience and learn the maps, you become less likely to die to animals, basically. Now with the global wildlife refresh, they are going to change that, so we have to relearn where all the animals are. They're almost certainly primarily talking about predators there, but also some prey like deer and whatnot. So we have to relearn where they are, and also see if there's any kind of new mechanics to do with that. So that's going to be interesting. I will say though, however, that I don't think this change is as big as we think it is, for the same reason that the loot refresh wasn't as big as we thought. So when they released the DLC in 2022, they also did a loot refresh where they changed where all the loot was. And people were saying, oh god, it's going to be so difficult, I thought I had it under control and so on. But then it turned out that they didn't change it that much. So on Interloper, for example, the loot had 4 different loot tables. Whenever you started an Interloper game, the game basically chose which one out of 4 sets of loot there would be in the world. And with the new system, it's still 4 sets of loot. It's just that it varies where things are, and there's also options within options. But effectively, if you played Interloper before and knew where all the major loot was, and then you had the loot refresh, if you just did the same thing as before, the likelihood was pretty high that you'd still find the things you needed. So yeah, the loot was changed, but not to such a degree that it severely impacted the game. And I think the same thing will happen with the wildlife refresh. I think that many of the animals will still be where we know already that they are. They will be in the same place. And but some will change. But it's not going to be a major change. Every animal is going to change. There'll be some things here and there. If they add some sort of new system to it, that will also impact it. The main thing I'm really curious about is if they're going to change the indoor animals. So if you're not familiar with this, I have a video coming about it, but there are some unique indoor animals in the game. There are 4 wolves. There's Fluffy in the cannery in Bleak Inlet. There is Scruffy in the cave in Broken Railroad. There is Sketchy in the ice caves in Hashira Valley. And recently there's Maisie, that's the name I gave her, because that place is a maze, in the cave system between the 3 regions in Far Territory. Those are the 4 indoor wolves. There's also 1 indoor rabbit called Larry, which is in the Bleak Inlet Fallen Muskeg cave. My big question is, are those 5 animals still going to be there? I hope so. I hope they don't change those 5. I hope they stay there, don't touch them, stay there, because they are legendary. If they do move them, I would like to know where they moved them, because those are unique animals. That's just me though. But yeah, so the Global Wildlife Refresh will change the dynamic of the animals of the game. Most likely we'll still learn how that changed after a few months, but it's still refreshing. And while it's not clear if they're just changing the location or they're adding new mechanics, I'm regardless excited to see how it's going to change. So yeah, that's it. Then there is a whole section in the dev diary about the future of the Long Dark, and here there is a lot to say as well, but we're going to take this relatively short. So there's multiple different things there. So Raf, who's the director of Hinterland, he talks about the future of the game and the future of the studio, and there's quite a lot to say here. I'm not going to go into all the details about it. I do recommend that if you're interested in the future of the Long Dark and the future of Hinterland, you should read the dev diary. It is quite long. It's definitely the longest dev diary ever written, I'm pretty sure. But it's a good dev diary. People really like it. But there's a lot of minor news and things that, like takeaways from this. And we're just going to try and go through them relatively quickly. First is the visual enhancement update. So they have announced they're going to improve the visuals for the game, but it will only impact people playing on high settings, basically. And that hasn't happened yet, and that's not going to come with DLC Part 6, which was in the initial roadmap. It will come later at some point in 2025. Okay. Then the question is, when Episode 5 comes out and DLC Part 6 has come out, what happens then? Is the game just finished? Well, no. There are some things that I want to change. They're going to continue updating. There are two things they're going to continue updating for a little while. One is the trader. The trader, they don't say it directly, but I think it's pretty clearly implied that they are aiming to add things the trader can do over time, like presumably more trading things for him, right? So the trader, it seems, will be updated in time. Same thing with Safehouse Customization, so they're going to update that in time as well, probably giving you more furniture options and also iron out bugs and that sort of thing. So that's also going to be updated in time as well. So content within those things are still coming after the content patches have been completed. They're also going to improve their custom settings. So in the game now, you can do a custom run and you can tweak all sorts of things. And that's great. A lot of people do that, particularly when you want something innovative and different. However, there are limitations in the current setting. There are a lot of stuff you can't tweak. Misery, for one, you can't add the misery afflictions. Well, there is a way, but not in the default settings. So they want to rehash and like completely change the custom settings so you can make your own unique run with a lot more flavor, basically. So that's coming too at some point. And then they are also planning to add mod support. And this one I have known about for a long time. Araf has said this several times over the last few years. But for some reason, a lot of people think that Hintlen is like anti-mod, but they're not. They just don't have anything to do with the mods. And they can't condone it or condemn it. It's just something that's out there. But they have said before that they want to have mod support for the game, so that when people make mods, it becomes more integrated. So that's coming as well at some point. Other than that, there are basically continuous minor updates coming. Like they'll improve things, they'll add content. And Raf has basically said that they probably will continue updating the Long Dark until it starts declining in popularity. And basically, the way he phrases it is basically what he's saying is that they have other games they're working on. They're working on, I think, at least 3 other games. But they would like, ideally, to release those games when the Long Dark is at a decline in sales. So they don't have 2 major games competing, is the idea, I guess. So that might mean that there will be some updates for the Long Dark until basically people stop being interested. But my impression is that in addition to the things already mentioned, they will continue to add updates to the Long Dark for as long as they feel they have the time or energy or interest. But we're probably talking about minor updates for the time being. Question though, would you like another DLC? I would. I think this DLC was fantastic. Sure, there were drawbacks. You know, the Cougar didn't work out. There are some minor things I'm not too keen on. I don't really care that they added scurvy, for example. But overall, I think the entire Tales thing, even if all of it was DLC only, is fantastic. And I absolutely would love a second DLC. They don't need to do that, but it will be awesome to do it. So let me know what you think about that. Finally, a minor thing. He's talking in the Dev Diary about the Long Dark movie. So this is something they talked about a while back, that they were making a Long Dark movie, and then it kind of went silent, and we're not sure what happened there. So yeah, what's happening there? And they said in the Dev Diary, he basically says that this has not been abandoned yet. They are talking about making a movie about the Long Dark, but it hasn't really manifested yet. But they haven't lost sight of it. And they haven't abandoned it, so it is in the works, and they're hoping that they're going to share news about this movie in 2025. So that'd be interesting to see. That's a little cool thing. If they need actors, you know, there's a couple people I could recommend. First off, Rand. Rand looks exactly like Methuselah, so get Rand in there as Methuselah. And then Thomasina is an aspiring actress. She's done acting gigs. You know, she could be Astrid, or if not, she could be the random woman who finds Astrid in episode 4 or something. So get Thomasina in there, get her in there. And then of course the big question is who plays Will and who plays Astrid. You know, give me your thoughts. Who's the perfect cast in this movie Is it Pedro Pascal again as well? Yeah, I think the perfect Molly, in my opinion, in episode 3 is Frances McDormand. That's the perfect Molly. Other than that, I don't know who you would cast in any of these roles. If I'm honest, I don't have a clear picture of who could play what there. Let me know what you think. Okay, so that's all the major news, really. A couple other smaller things that I'll also mention, that was mentioned in the developer diary. So the Nintendo Switch is still being worked on. Nintendo Switch hasn't got DLC Part 5, as I understand it, and there's been a lot of issues with it, and they're still working on fixing that. So that's coming. They just haven't fixed it yet, but they are working on it. One thing that's not mentioned in the dev diary is the console fixes. So PlayStation users have quite a few issues with the game at the moment, and there's no news on that, but they probably will fix it. There's also the Hinterland store. The Hinterland store is coming. That was a pop-up store that happened a little while back, and it sold out right away. And they haven't forgotten about it. It is coming back. They just don't have a release date, but it is going to come back, and you probably can buy that mug that I know you'll want. And then finally, there are a bunch of new games coming. We know there are 3. I think it's 1 or 2 big ones and 1 or 2 small ones. I'm not sure exactly, but they're not going to reveal any information about that yet. They did say in an earlier dev diary they're going to reveal some information about one of the smaller games at the end of this year. I don't know if that's still the case, but they basically said that they want to basically try and hold back on the games until the Long Dark starts declining in popularity a little bit, if I understand it correctly. Basically, they want to take their time and make sure that it all works out with announcing a new game and starting a community for the game and hyping it up and play testing and all that stuff. So it's a huge endeavor. But when they do announce the new games, it will be an early access game as well. So hopefully we can all try it. I look forward to trying it, whatever it is. I have absolutely no idea what it is. The only thing we know about the new game is this brief video that Raph posted ages ago, which shows some interior, but it doesn't tell us anything about the game itself. We do know it's made, or at least one of them, is made in Unreal 5 engine. So it's not a Unity game. Well, that's pretty much, I think that's pretty much everything we know about it at this point. But exciting stuff. So yeah, that's everything. That's the entire dev diary. It's a long one. It's a big one. And I did leave out some details, and there were a couple of things that were a bit ambiguous. Let me know what you thought about it. What are you most excited about? And again, if you want the details, I do recommend you read it yourself, because it's pretty long. Also, kudos to the developers, as in Raph here, for being very transparent. This dev diary seems to have been very positively received. People really like this dev diary because he's very clear on a lot of stuff. He explains a lot of things that he doesn't have to explain, and he's very transparent about how things are received and how they're planning things. And a lot of developers don't say that sort of stuff. So it's a pretty honest dev diary, and that's nice, isn't it? So kudos to Raph for that. And all that being said, that was the dev diary. I hope you're excited as I am. We have, as of this video, we have probably about a month and a half before it comes out, I imagine. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. I'll look forward to testing the Cougar and the Wildlife Refresh Trader. Trader's going to be interesting. Look forward to that. And yeah, that's the dev diary. That's the new content. That's the future of the Long Dark. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoy the content. Hope you enjoy the channel, and I hope you enjoy the new content in the game when that's coming. See you next time, survivors. Bye bye.